Welcome back to another episode of the Mindsets podcast. I am your host, Angus Cook. This is the second episode of the year, and today I'm joined by Tommy.
What's up?
Goes by TommyRunPT on Instagram for those that are aware. I've got you on here today to talk about various things. But first and foremost, do you want to do a bit of an introduction to your background, where you've come from, what you do, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Tommy, known as TommyRunPT on Instagram and TikTok. Where have I come from? Well, I'm a military brat, so moved around a load, so I don't really know where my home is from my childhood. But grew up in the UK, moved to London after uni, and have just been doing kind of various startup jobs, working tech, and that sort of thing. I've always had a love for sport. Grew up with 3 siblings, 2 older brothers, so always had that mismatch. 2 older brothers who were like 5 years and 7 years older than me. So I was always the little runt getting beat up on the football pitch. But I think that was a good thing, to be honest, for me. Always loved this sort of thing. But I think, more recently, the full story goes that I was actually very unhappy in my job. I had a breakup, and then we were just talking about it off air. I had a breakup and I was like, you know what, I need to quit my job. I was lost. I had to live at home with my parents. I was 26. COVID had meant that I was just kind of trapped at home, and I was a bit like, what do I do in my life? So I started just thinking about the different things that light me up. One of those things is fitness, running. It's not all that I'm about, although it very much has become my identity.
It does for everyone. That's classic.
I was just like, how can I get into fitness? Like, how can I get into the fitness industry? I knew nothing about the fitness industry, didn't know, what it was like, really. I've kind of always been a bit of an outsider looking in. Really hated gym rats, hated the whole vibe, but I thought I could bring something a little bit different. So I became, long story short, I became a PT, a personal trainer, and found myself go from working in sales for a fintech, doing relatively well, to 6 months later being on the floor of a gym, changing the...
Wiping sweat.
Wiping sweat and just wearing their gym uniform and feeling like, I'd really flopped. And it was a massive pill of humility to take. I had thrown all of my savings into, starting my own thing, trying to coach people, and just felt a bit lost. So I moved back to London about 3 years ago, but I kept kind of posting videos and stuff about running specifically, because running has brought me so much. So I really truly believe it can bring other people a lot. So wanted to just provide value on socials, and have kept posting on the side. I still have a full-time job, still do that, but being made redundant from my old job was the catalyst for me to really go hard on the posting
and focus that a little bit more. Okay, and
so
was running always your sport? You said that you had a bit of a background in various sports, but was running the clear winner for you from day one?
No way. Used to fucking hate running. Actually, funnily enough, somehow I'm still in touch with my old head of PE on Strava, and he commented on one of my posts recently from an ultra I did and said, still can't believe you used to hate running so much, because he really wanted me to start running when I used to play a lot of hockey. Rugby was my main sport, scrum half, and loved that, and I couldn't understand why you would run and not have anything to chase. I just didn't understand the concept.
I get that,
It felt pointless. I didn't really understand the concept of grit and working hard and that sort of stuff. So running came to me when I lost rugby, really. So I left school, only really played schoolboy rugby, left school, and I needed an outlet. I'm quite an energetic person, never stopped. So for my own kind of mental, I needed to get out the door. So I just started running. All I had was a 30-pound pair of Adidas trainers from Sports Direct, some old rugby shorts and a t-shirt, and I was out the door. Oh, my Casio watch, an essential.
Slaps. A good old Casio watch never lets
you know what? I was actually kind of sad when I bought a Garmin for the first time, because I had to say goodbye to my Casio. But I would go and just run. I'd just run hard. like everyone just does, you know, I'm going for a run for half an hour. And so that's how I kind of got into it. But I was a very reluctant runner. I only admitted that I was a runner when I went to uni, really, or like just before. And I say admitted that I was a runner is because I never really liked runners. Like I was never really like a school kid runner. Wasn't like that classic sort of whippet who was running around doing cross country at school and stuff. So I didn't really like that identity. But then I realized how valuable it was for me. Realized how much it gave me, like mentally, physically. It was a great outlet. And got into triathlon at university.
So I was going to say, yeah, because I mean, if we take a look at today, I've seen photos of you doing like ultra marathons across mad terrain, and going from admitting you're a runner at the beginning of uni to now you've done ultra marathons and stuff like that. Was triathlon the sort of gateway drug?
Yeah,
into that transition.
I think for me, like I don't know, you hear it a lot, like do hard things, that sort of thing. But I've always kind of liked the idea of doing hard things. I've always admired people who do feats of endurance that take them to a level that people didn't even think was possible. I've always admired that. When lockdown was at its like peak, I was watching like YouTube videos of ultra marathon documentaries. So like Billy Yang and you know, others would make these amazing, beautiful documentaries, beautiful scenery of the mountains, and these absolute nutcases were running 100 miles in one push over the mountains. So we're not going around a track, we're climbing mountains, and they're running for 24, 30 hours straight. And I got emotional. I'd be watching these and I'd be like, a tear would like come down my face, like watching these people like put everything into this stupid endeavor. And I was just like, that is so awesome. And at that stage I was like, I'd never be able to, that's like not me, you know, you just don't see yourself being able to do that sort of thing. Like I'm never going to be able to run an ultra marathon, whatever it is. But I think I have this desire in me to always be a little bit of an imposter. Okay. Even when I was going to the gym, like at school and stuff, I still hated gym rats. Like I still hated the whole gym vibe. I really have never liked the whole Gymshark vibe, the kind of vanity of it. I've hated all of that. I don't really like, you know, 10k speed road runners and stuff like that. I'm a bit more grown up now, but like I just have never liked that kind of environment. I've liked to go in and feel like I'm different because I'm a bit of an indie kid or whatever. I want to be a bit different. Sure. So I feel like even going into triathlon, you'd have the experts, and I like the idea of having a slightly shitter bike and not having the expertise, but still doing all right. Yeah. And I like the idea of being the underdog or being the imposter. Is it having the ability to kind of stick it to the man, be that person that is on everyone's radar, but really shouldn't have a right to be there? Yeah, I kind of love that. Yeah. I kind of love, and I also love what that represents to people who really don't believe they deserve to be in places that they probably could deserve to be. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so like people who don't identify with being a fit person or going to the gym or being a runner. I want to be the person who disrupts the idea of what a runner is or disrupts the idea of what a gym goer is, so that they go, actually, yeah, maybe I could be welcome in that environment. Maybe it is for everyone. Maybe everyone should do resistance training. Proving that there's this sort of side, that there is accessibility into it. Because I think you're right. You get so much marketing around sport and fitness. And you actually said it earlier on, like fitness becomes your identity. Yeah. Usually. Like you catch a bug for it and one way or another, and for anyone that's getting into fitness now, don't let that scare you away. There's just certain aspects that you take into your life that you end up, obviously, it becomes more of your life. You talk about it more, that sort of thing. But as a result of that, as an outsider, it can feel really like, if that's not how you already feel, how on earth do you enter into doing it just for your health? Like it suddenly seems like I can't just do it for my health. I've got to do it for my aesthetics. I've got to do it for my health. I've got to do it for my social life. And it's like, it's not the case. It's just what
starts to happen. So you're sort of proving it doesn't need to be that way.
Well, I think like at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be an obsession. I'm an obsessive person. I like to go the extra mile or the extra few miles. I like to push. I like to do that extreme thing and be obsessed with something. But for every person, it doesn't have to be obsessive. You don't have to be like really into fitness to do fitness. Like it doesn't have to be your identity. I think the problem is fitness, going to the gym, whether it's like running, going to the gym, swimming, whatever it is, people start doing it. It's very much not their identity. They start doing it. They realize how amazing and valuable it is for them, how great they feel, how they realize, they feel more confident. I've coached a girl before who told me that she feels more empowered and stronger as a woman. They start feeling like, oh shit, I can see why everyone's banging on about this stuff now. And then inevitably it becomes their identity because they realize that it's an essential part of their day. But it's like if no one ever slept before and someone discovered sleeping, they'd be obsessed with it. They'd be telling everyone how great it is. It's an essential part of what it means to like exist and feel good. That's why people are obsessed. That's why people on socials are annoying, because they're constantly talking about this one thing that you don't associate with. But you don't have to be obsessed with it. But it should be part of your life. That's how I see it. And if I can bridge the gap, if I can have like people who just have never, one of the biggest compliments to me is when someone comments or writes you a message and said, I've never liked running, I don't like running, like I've never even thought of doing it, but your videos make me finally make me kind of consider it. I'm like, yes, because you don't have to be a runner, you don't have to like associate with the crowd, but it's a valuable thing to do.
I think one of the things that I notice as well, because obviously with your content, you a lot of the time you are talking about running, but you are running a lot of the time when you're doing the videos, but you're not always talking about running. And one of the things that's quite obvious to me is you have a bit of a passion for being outdoors, clearly, and you have seen some pretty cool places around the world, and you still run when you're out there, and it's a totally different form of video, and you're kind of proving that running can be just an accessory to your life and you can do it in some really cool places. And is that also the way you look at it?
Yeah, I think running is just a way of moving. It's a natural movement. One of the best ways, in my opinion, to see the mountains is to see them by foot, because you deserve to be at the top, and you kind of have a little bit more, to get a bit spiritual about it, you have a bit more respect for the mountain, a bit more admiration for the mountain. Sometimes I even like personify, if I'm on an ultra, I'm like personifying the mountain and almost like hoping that it will allow me to.
Well, they're very spiritual places. I mean, especially, you just have got back from a trip to see some volcanoes erupting, which so I got shown some videos before we started this, and quite honestly, they're some of the most amazing videos I've ever seen. And we were talking about how I was fortunate enough to be in Indonesia last year and went to Java, one of the biggest islands in Indonesia, saw some volcanoes. They weren't erupting, but I think just the awe and like the awesomeness of those views really sort of humbles you as a person. And I think you being able to run up that, you don't realize that.
Wait, let me just. I didn't run up.
Not up the volcano, but run up mountains and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
but they are sacred places. Like the locals there really treat them like
100%.
They're fully sacred. They never do anything to disrespect.
Especially when it's roaring, you can hear it roaring beneath you, and like, you have there's something about mountains. They're so big that they almost silence their surroundings. Especially something like a volcano that comes up above everything surrounding it. Like you're genuinely in awe of it. And it's one of the main reasons I do ultra running is because once you get to certain distances, it's pretty uncommon that you'd have a flat ultra, really. I mean, like, there's a few in the UK and stuff, but they get me to travel around and see new places, and they're for the most part in mountainous areas. So you get to conquer the mountains or feel like you've really sort of, defeated that course, but also been completely humbled by it.
I think that's obviously, if you compare running like that to running on a treadmill, and I know you've actually done a video about running on a treadmill, it can be good for your pace, but it's also inherently boring.
No, it's so boring.
And so
I would highly recommend not doing it.
Yeah, and for people that are trying to get into running post New Year, if you've been struggling, and you've been trying to do it on a treadmill, then I highly recommend getting out and about, because there's so much stuff that can happen on a run, especially if you live in London. There's some crazy stuff that can happen that you'll see, but it's completely distracting, and it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, I think, look, there's value. I used to be someone who just hated even the idea of treadmills. There's value to treadmills though. They serve a purpose. Like if you're looking to replicate outdoor running a little tip, maybe put it like 2% incline. You'll get a little bit more resistance, it'd be nice. But you know, for injury recovery, for sustaining certain paces, it can be helpful. For hill training, if you haven't got many hills around, you just whack that bitch up and just like run up it for half an hour. You don't do that, then come back and tell me running on a treadmill is easy, because there are reasons for it. And if it's going to make you run more, if running out in this current weather is such a deterrent from you running, then go to the gym and get on a treadmill, and guess what, the weights are next to it. Like, you know, you can go do a bit of weight training as well. That's great. So I'm actually an advocate of it, but it's a tool. It shouldn't be how you train in the winter if you can help it. I think, you know, a lot of people there are plenty of reasons why you wouldn't go out. Use it as a tool, but if you can get outside at any time, huge value in that. I'm a big advocate for getting out the door. You know?
You touched on very briefly that injury, and you made a bit of a series about coming back from injury last year. What was your injury?
I think most of my content has been me complaining about being injured recently, to be honest. So back in July last year, I did a UK ultra. So I did Race to the Stones, which is a 100k in my backyard. It's in Wiltshire, which is like near my parents. So I knew the area, and I'd seen it, like since my parents had lived there. I'd seen it, so I was interested in it. So I was actually using it as the irony is I was kind of using it as a training race, which I know sounds ridiculous because it is, but I was using it as a training race for UTMB, which is like the kind of Super Bowl of European ultra running, if you've never heard of it. But I got into that last year. Unfortunately, I did this 100k. It's a relatively flat 100k. I mean, it's over the Wiltshire Hills, but it's not a mountain ultra. So what that meant is that I was actually running for 70 to 80% of it, rather than, you know, walking up the hills and stuff. So I think what had happened was it was the kind of final straw that broke the camel's back, and I didn't feel anything during the race, didn't feel anything like the day after. I even went for a recovery run after. But a couple of days later, I was just feeling like I couldn't spring off my left foot at all. I didn't know what it was, like it sucked. And basically what it was I never knew this, but I'm like partially flat-footed. So I have like flexible flat foot, whatever that means, which basically, I'll tell you what it means. It means that when I'm standing, it's flat. But when I walk, it like create an arch. Okay. So I overworked my posterior tib, which caused like tendonitis, pretty severe tendonitis in my foot. And it's been months and months and months of patience and frustration and trying to get back to being a runner again.
What is the method of coming back from those sorts of injuries in your specific case?
You know what, foot injuries, it's got to be one of the worst, because you don't know that you're going to suddenly get this foot injury. Like you can build for stronger knees and stronger hips, and you know, do all sorts to prevent shin splints and all these things. You know, get stronger glutes. All of those things will help prevent injury. But something like an overworked posterior tib, that's just not impossible to prevent for.
Yeah.
So it's really frustrating because it's a really awkward place. So I've been doing various kind of band work. It's been very progressive. Like I couldn't spring off it. Someone actually reached out to me who does like all sorts of programming to sort of heal injured runners and stuff. I don't think they realized how hard it was, because he was trying to get me to do like plyometrics immediately. I was like, dude, I can't even like hop on it. You get me to do loads of serious stuff. But the physio I had was getting me to do very sort of like low key stuff, and rest, obviously, band work. But a lot of like the journey has really just begun. When you get an injury, it's an opportunity for you to learn about yourself, your body. And for me, I never knew that I was, flexibly flat-footed. Never knew I had weak feet. So here we are today, looking forward and planning for like strengthening my feet up in strange ways. But yeah, that would be maybe some more foot content. Will come.
Wow, that
free of charge.
The views just went through the roof. One of the things with injury is it massively affects the way you think, and obviously it's an opportunity, like you said, for you to learn about yourself. Do you find that it's an opportunity to learn not only how your body works, but how your brain works?
Yeah. It's a funny one because everyone says that you you go for a run and you come back and you just your head's cleared, or like it's a way to work through all your problems. And it certainly is. Like going for a run is a good way to stop yourself from being so emotional. Actually, my military dad used to tell me, I think this is one of the reasons why I didn't like running, because he would tell us like, go for a run,
Right, yeah.
If we were a kid and we were having a strop or whatever, he'd tell us to go for a run. Turns out he was right the whole time. But it does sort you out. Like it's a great equalizer or calibrator. If I'm stressed, anxious, all those sorts of things, and I've got a run on the cards, it's a great opportunity to do that run. But it won't solve your problems. Running doesn't solve your problems, but what it does do is it helps you figure out how to solve your problems. So it does clear the head. I think a lot of your clearest thoughts will happen when you're doing some sort of physical activity, when you're alone, when you're being a little bit more present. And I think that running for me, people say running's my meditation. It's not the same as meditation, but it can allow you to, zone out. And I think it's really important to zone out. All of your anxieties, all of your stresses are either remuneration on the future or reflection on the past. And so anything that can get you more into the present moment, I have to be a big advocate of. If you're just constantly thinking, and I have a busy mind, just constantly thinking, overthinking, it's noisy up there. If I can go for a run and find myself in that, runner's high, in that flow state, that is helping me, because it's stopping me from having all of those overthoughts about the future or what I've done in the past, and it's making me present. So that's why I think it's valuable. And yes, it's gonna help you understand your body for sure.
Then an injury happens then, and you're unable to run, and you no longer have this key to flow state and kind of being able to sort stuff out up there. Like you said, it's busy. So did you find a different method, or did you just kind of have to deal with it?
Yes and no. I found a new method when I thought that I would only have to for 5 weeks. So I started swimming, got back into swimming. I was like, oh man, I feel like I'm at uni again. 2-hour swim sessions in the morning at uni. I was like, oh, yeah, and I quite enjoyed swimming. There's just a lot of faff, before and after. So more admin. So I got a bit more into swimming. I was, of course, lifting weights, and that was it. It was like cardio was swimming, lifting weights, maybe a bit of cardio in the gym as well. But I was just waiting for my injury to get better, because really running is my anchor. Unfortunately, my injury was slow, and I eventually decided to drop out of UTMB, and so my running disappeared, and my goal disappeared, and I was left with the abyss of my mind. And I went down a little bit of a spiral, actually. I went a bit off the rails. I have this tendency to go a little bit off the rails. Running to me has always been something that's taken me away from my vices, taken me away from too much drinking, taken me away from other substances. It's something that has stopped me from doing all the things that I'm drawn to. And in that period of time, I really struggled to stay on track. And because I was so sort of loose, I ended up losing my phone on a train and going chasing it, and then stacked it down some stairs drunk, and then fucked my knees up, and it wasn't great. And I have to be grateful for my girlfriend, because she's very patient with me when I'm in that situation where I can't run, and I don't understand why I'm frustrated. But running is for me a great way to have the daily discipline and calibrator. And I think it's a weakness of mine that I don't have an alternative.
Okay. That's interesting that you still think it's a weakness. And is it, I think the thing that's quite honest that again people fail to discuss is if you ask someone to be honest about the way that they feel on something, especially if they're going through an injury or a setback, they will always say, yeah, it makes me feel this way, but I've got it figured out. And it's actually really mature to be like, I haven't got it figured out yet.
Oh, I've got jack shit figured out. Yeah.
And I think that's honestly more wise than saying you've got it figured out, because ultimately if you admit you don't have something figured out and you're searching for ways to figure it out, you're more likely to find multiple things to help rather than saying this is going to figure it out. And if it doesn't, then you've got jack shit, but because you thought you didn't have jack shit, you're actually one step behind.
I think anyone who thinks that they're in a good place or thinks that they have figured it out should be ready for something to come
like
along.
a tsunami.
Something is going to come.
Yeah.
The only certainty you have is that you can't be certain of anything that comes up. Like at the end of the day, you may have a lot figured out. You've got more figured out than you did when you were 21. But I think the smartest thing you can do for yourself is to figure out how to embrace ambiguity and embrace the challenge of we don't know what's going to come up next. We're sort of figuring it out as we go. Because you actually realize the more people you interact with, how few people really know what they're doing. No one knows what they're doing. I talked about being an imposter. Everyone feels like an imposter a lot of the time. If you can embrace that kind of imposter mindset where you're sort of moving into new territory all the time, you're embracing that discomfort. If you're starting to feel comfortable, you're like, well, I need to change something up. You have to do the things that you don't want to do, that are challenging, that are hard, that make you slightly uncomfortable. Like in everyday life, you should see it. You should see things that you don't want to do as an opportunity. Oh, the dishes need doing. That's an opportunity to feel better. I need to make my bed. That's an opportunity to feel better. I want to talk to that girl in Pret. That's an opportunity to feel better. Every interaction that you have, everything you don't want to do, everything you're slightly fearful of, if you can step forward and do the thing, 100% of the time you'll feel better because you did it, because you were the agent of that situation. You didn't let the life happen to you passively. You're the agent of that situation. You did it. You took action. Action's the chief good. Reaction comes from it. And that's all that you need to do. Just embrace that kind of discomfort. But you can't do that without realizing that you haven't got anything, like you're not clear on anything. You don't know what's coming. If you can embrace ambiguity, embrace the fact that life actually cannot be planned, then I think you'll be more comfortable with it.
Okay, cool. I really like it. And do you know what? This leads on to a question I've been wondering for a while, having watched a lot of your videos and listened to a lot of the questions you're asking the person that's watching. You're a very self-aware person.
Thanks, dude.
How do you become so self-aware? Like, is it through, I find that I personally think I'm quite self-aware, especially when I'm in London trying to walk in and out of people. I seem to be the only person that's on everyone's wavelength. Other people are trying to walk into me and I'm able to dodge them. But in like the bigger scale and picture things, I feel like I'm self-aware because I fucked up a lot at doing different things, which makes me aware of when I'm doing something that could cause me to fuck up. And like you said before, it's busy up there because I'm constantly thinking about everything I'm doing and constantly trying to analyze myself and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you put things very clearly, and I'm not necessarily at that point yet. How do you sort of review yourself the way that you currently do and make it so clear?
I think part of how my brain works actually is clarity comes from verbalizing things. And I think actually a lot of people are like that. They don't realize it. I think a lot of men don't realize that. I actually think that men could do a lot better by just speaking it out, like even if you're wrong, verbalize it. And actually I think it's a shame that we feel so scared to publicly speak quite a lot of the time because we're treading on eggshells about stuff. And if you speak it, it means you've concluded it, but that's not true. You can speak things and figure them out as you go. You can verbalize something that's wrong and then turn around and go, that was wrong. But verbalizing does help. So that's a way that I talk to people. I try and verbalize, my thoughts and where I think you can tell on this podcast, I talk a lot, So I'm talking a lot. I'm trying to figure it out. I've gone through periods of my life where I've journaled quite a lot. But I think that I've liked that. It's been good. but the tendency I have is that I'll journal when I'm really having a tough time. So I'll end up getting to my journal and writing things down, or like typing them up or whatever, and I'll just start like wallowing in my shit, and it won't be structured enough, and I won't be like forcing myself to be grateful for things. I'll just be wallowing. And it's helpful to get thoughts out on paper and know how your mind's working, but it can take over your entire morning in your mind. So I think there's a risk with journaling that you're just gonna start journaling at 7 a.m. and then not actually ever stop journaling in your thoughts until lunchtime, which is definitely a risk. But if you can have like a structured journal, that like with, you know, 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things you did yesterday, 3 things you're doing tomorrow, something like that, then that's helpful. But yeah, talk more, write more. But I think generally, like, I'm just quite a reflective person. I don't know where that comes from. I mean, I grew up in a very Christian household. So, you know, we were thinking big thoughts a lot, you know, thinking about eternal life, thinking about right and wrong, thinking about like morality. And I was debating in my mind, you know, whether all of this stuff was true or false. So I got, you know, really into kind of Christian apologetics and like, you know, the arguments of the new atheists and all of this stuff. So I'm a big thinker. I have since concluded that I've gone kind of black sheep in the other way from my entire family. But I think by doing that, I've had to also build my own like compass and what I think individually is right or wrong, what I can justify as being right or wrong, not what's written in a book for me, but I've thought very seriously for very long periods of time about what I'm about. And that might just be because I'm a introspective person, but it might also be because my upbringing kind of forced us to speak about big topics around the table. So I've always been like that, I think. Yeah.
It seems like you've kind of your thoughts are constrained by your own rules rather than being constrained by society's rules that have been taught, and that's quite a cool thing. And talking about journaling, I actually saw something really interesting this week online, and if the person ever listens to this that I'm about to steal the quote from, firstly, I'm really sorry, all credit goes to you. I can't remember who it was, but if I gave you an algebraic question right now and I just verbalized it, you'd probably be like, can you say it again and can you give me a pen and paper? Because you'd need to write it down to figure it out. And that algebraic question is actually quite simple in comparison to your life. Yet pretty much everyone I know doesn't go through life writing stuff down, trying to figure it out. And it just makes no sense that for something that could take you 2 minutes on a piece of paper, that you would use the piece of paper and a pen. But then when it's your life, you don't do that. And that to me, it was like a really hard hitting thing. And if this is the first time someone's listening to that, and I hope it hits as hard as that, because sometimes just putting a pen to paper, and for those that watch on YouTube, you can see what I'm holding up right now. And for those that don't, you have no idea. But I spent time at the beginning of the year utilizing this.
It's a notepad.
And snaked. It's a nice notepad. And I basically started writing down my plan for the year and also other things. And that's not in terms of setting goals. It's just a plan of what I want to do. And honestly, all of those thoughts were in my head, but they weren't clear. They were all mixed. They were all jumbled. And that's how my mental state was as a result. Like, things weren't clear in my head. But then literally by having a piece of paper, which I can now stick to, this is my boss a little bit. Every day I look at it and the job's been done for me. I don't have to think. And it's given me that time back. It's given me that clarity back. And it's actually stupid to me that some ink and a piece of shredded wood can give me so much sort of clarity.
Yeah, a friend of mine, we did like a Secret Santa.
Right.
And someone bought another person a pen. And it was like the boring present of the group. And we all got like stupid, funny presents, whatever. There was a budget. And then like 6 months later, this is at uni, we were like in the library, he still got the pen. And we were joking about it's like actually been the best present ever and all this sort of stuff. And that is actually so true. A pen has huge value. Because you can write so much on there. And like back to your point of you know, if you had like an algebraic question, a simple algebraic question, you'd have to write it down. You have something as complicated as your life, and we don't even write it down. Life is so complicated. People think that you can get it sorted, or they'll look at someone else and they think they've figured it all out. They haven't figured it all out. They've figured one thing they're presenting to you out. But life is so complicated. And one of the things I really want to stress on when I'm posting videos and stuff is to like have people cut themselves a bit of slack. Because actually it's a message that I wish I received. Was like, stop putting so much pressure on yourself. If you skip a workout, or if you like miss a workout, or if you did a shit workout, like it really doesn't matter as much as you think it matters. What matters is that you're showing up consistently over a long period of time. That's the only thing that constitutes success and results in success, is showing up consistently over a long period of time. But each time you show up doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to show up 100% of the time, like at all. Like half the time I'll train for one of these huge races and I'll look at how much I've done and I just think I've not done enough. Like I've just really not shown up enough. And then I'll absolutely like completely impress myself with the race. I'm like, oh, I did. And over the long period of time, there's a massive base of training there. I have done enough. And sometimes you overthink how much you need to do and what perfection looks like, but perfection is bullshit.
I like that. Perfection is bullshit.
Yeah.
Cool. So I want to move on to some listener questions.
Sick.
So there's a variety of questions here, 2 of which have come from Mindsets followers, and 1 of which has actually come from one of your followers, who is now a Mindsets follower.
Yeah, big up.
So one of the first questions that I have is this person, Josh, someone I know actually, has asked, I got into running recently. Like everyone, I'm in my mid-20s in London. What are the best tips for recovery? Don't
underestimate movement for recovery. I think, being sedentary. If I were to talk about the worst things for recovery, one of the worst things for recovery is being sedentary. Like you just sort of, your muscles seize up and there's not enough blood flow, and you want to get moving. So it depends what you're recovering from. If you're recovering from a race, I would advise doing a little bit of a jog the next day, or getting on a bike, or just getting some movement going. So like, some of the most successful ultra runners out there, they'll go for a run after they've run 100 miles over the mountains the next day. It's just nuts stuff, but they know that they need to move their body. If you just suddenly stop, it can be really detrimental. So I hate to say it, but your best trick is an ice bath. Jessica Ennis was doing it way before anyone thought it was cool. Getting in like a bin filled with ice and water, like it is a great way to recover. So if you can do some sort of cold therapy, if you can get some movement, I think they're my best tips for recovery. And stretching, and obviously, stretching can help to stretch out the muscle. I wouldn't be too crazy with stretching. There is ultimately there's ultimately a lot of differing results on the data with stretching. There's a lot of arguments about stretching out there, whether it's actually helpful and all this sort of stuff. I personally am a big advocate of stretching. I think that if David Goggins does it now, I'm going to do it. I think it's helpful to get full range of motion and that sort of thing. So yeah, inevitably, if you feel like it would be good to stretch, I think that's important to tune into how you feel. Stretch out, eat loads of protein, of course, ice baths, and a bit of movement. Don't stop. Just don't think that. Yeah, your body will want you to stop, but don't stop, because actually what it needs is a bit of movement.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. They're my tips for recovery.
Well, there you go, Josh. So the next question is also from another one of the Mindsets followers, Matt. Matt wants to know if you should get fitted for running shoes or just grab some off the shelf that look kind of cushiony and good.
Definitely don't just grab it off the shelf because it looks cushiony and good. Wow, I could go on a big tangent. So the best thing to do is to go and get fitted.
Is it a gait analysis is the technical term?
Yeah, a gait analysis. I mean, I'm doing these inverted commas with my fingers if you're not watching, because you are basically, when you go to one of these shops and you get your gait supposedly analysed, sometimes it will be someone posing as an expert who doesn't know the first thing about what they're looking at the end of the day. So if you're going to a shop on a high street and expecting to find a real expert, you're probably not going to get it. They also, even if you're going to a private store that's not a chain or something, they need to sell what they've got on the shelf. And if they don't have something suitable for you, they're still going to sell you something for 130 quid. So the cynic in me is I'm a bit cynical of the gait analysis, but that being said, it is your best bet to actually go and get a pair of shoes that fits you. So please take what I just said with a pinch of salt, but it's important to recognize that they don't have this godlike knowledge of how your gait should be and all this sort of stuff. Also, I have a bit of an important philosophy about shoes generally. I think most runners neglect the gym. So what that's going to mean is they're probably not going to be that strong. Their joints and stuff will be slightly weak. And there is a bit of a myth that more foam means more protection, because actually the reality is that your body is completely capable of doing the natural movement that is running. If you were to go to a park, maybe in the summer, but if you were to go to the park, take your shoes off and run around, you're moving in your most natural way. Because what you're doing is every time you land, whether it's unconsciously or not, to land to protect your heel, to land to protect your knees and your hips, and also to lift off the ground as quickly as possible because it's like tough underfoot, all those things. All of that is good running form. So the more you limit your proprioception, which is, how your body feels, knowing how your body feels and how it's moving, the more you limit that with a lot of foam, the higher likelihood you have of actually having form that's not necessarily beneficial for you and all that sort of thing. So don't just think that more cushion is good. For example, I have run 2 ultra marathons of more than 100k over the mountains with foam that's about, not even 2 centimeters, and pretty much been fine. I say pretty much because you're never really fine.
I was going to say, there's no way you can be fine after that distance.
But that's much longer than a marathon, and I'm not really concerned about the amount of foam I have because I know that ultimately I'm running in a way that's protecting me. So yeah, don't just think, oh, that's really foamy, so my knees will be protected. It's probably the opposite. A lot of people will get really foamy shoes, and then they'll find they have knee problems. That being said, it is better to get proper running shoes. There are amazing running shoes out there now. It will feel like a bit of an investment from the PE trainers that you have, but it is worth it. It's definitely worth getting a pair of. I'm a huge advocate of ultra running, ultra with an A, just because they have a wider toe box. They're zero drop, and they're just great shoes, very comfortable. Hoka make great shoes, and then all the other brands make good shoes at that price point as well. But I think Hoka and Ultra have especially really think about the foot and having foot shaped shoes. Whereas there are some brands out there like Nike and Saucony who can make really fast shoes, but they're very narrow. So you're squeezing your foot into this cast for 26.2 miles, and it's not allowing the foot to do anything it's designed to do. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of these speed is everything. This is why I don't really like the kind of inner circle in running, because it's all about carbon plated, speed, nylon plated, everything's all about getting the fastest times on the road, and it's not about the value that running has for you every day. And I think what it creates is this elitism. And you have runners who compete, runners who race, runners who do marathons and ultras or half marathons or 10k, sub 30-minute 10ks, all these sort of crazy runners, proper runners. And then everyone else who just enjoys running, they'll consider themselves not a runner because they don't really care for that. I think everyone's a runner. Everyone who runs every day is a runner. And I think anything that's actually detrimental to your physical health, really narrow, massive offset carbon plated shoes, I just don't think they're beneficial. So they make you go faster, and I will run a fast as fast as I can on a marathon road race in carbon plated shoes, but I'm not an advocate for them for daily runners. So to actually answer the question, because it's probably a shit confusing answer, definitely go get your gait sorted, but you have to just run in something that feels good immediately. If it doesn't feel good immediately, it's not going to ever feel good. Okay, so that's like the top tip, is like running shoes, you'll feel good. You'll know when a running shoe feels good. And sadly, it's kind of a trial and error thing. You kind of have to keep buying shoes.
Well, I was going to say, they do actually have like a range on them.
Yeah, so I think like the manufacturers say like 500 miles, but that's the manufacturers, so they want you to buy more. I would say, around like once you get to like 500 miles or 800k on a pair of shoes, you should probably consider buying a new pair. But you should really, what matters more is how it looks. If it's really clearly worn down, like a really light girl who's 4'8", it's not gonna damage a shoe as much as like you, for example.
Just to clarify, I'm like 100 kilos, so there's a big difference there.
Yeah, exactly. You probably have to have a bigger rolling budget for your trainers than
which I did not know before I started getting involved in buying shoes. Awesome. Okay, and the last question, and this is, I believe, is one of your followers, goes by the name Chloe. Top 3 mistakes in beginner runners, and what should I be looking out for effectively?
Top 3 mistakes. All right, I'll come up with them as I say them. The first one that comes to mind is going too fast, like just always running hard, or always running fairly hard. So I was for many years I was a grey zone runner, and many people are grey zone runners. And what that means is like there's basically the effort zones, so heart rate zones that runners and cyclists especially will use to like measure effort. And the grey zone is basically like the middle zone. So there's 5 zones. There's zone 3, which is valuable if you use it, especially like that's kind of tempo pace. So if you're using it for race specific stuff, it is a zone to use. But if you're just always running in zone 3, if you're just always running hard or like hard enough to sustain a run for half an hour, you will plateau firstly, and you will run into injuries. Excuse the pun. You will cause injuries for sure. And it's just not actually an efficient way to train. Like if you really want to become fit and like become a good long distance runner, you have to train zone 2. So you have to drop into a very easy pace. And what that's going to mean is that it's going to mean, okay, so my second, which will be a nice segue. Second point will be that the second mistake is that walking isn't allowed. You should 100% be walking when you're training at some point. If it's literally because your heart rate is too high, you need to break into a walk, or if it's because you got a bit of a niggle in your knee, you just need to like calm down and break into a walk, or something. There is no shame in walking. If I'm to coach someone, I'll get them to do walk runs. Like if I'm coming back from injury, I do walk runs. Walking is a part of the same movement. It's a spectrum of movement. You go from standing to walking to running. It's all the same. It's all movement. If you think that you shouldn't walk, you're making a mistake.
I think I'm wrong, you're wrong, because I have always thought that if you walk on a run, like you should have just gone slower from the offset. Like you need to train yourself not to want to stop and walk. And I've always taken that approach and just been like, look, I would rather run less far and not walk, because to me in my head, then I've done a run.
Yeah.
Whereas otherwise I've not done a run, I think is the reward system I give myself.
Yeah, I think you should think more about time on the feet. So whether you're doing running for losing weight, or you're doing it just for like good health, or if you're actually training for some sort of race, think about time on the feet more than you think about pace or distance, because time on the feet is ultimately what you're training your body to deal with. You're really only hopping from one foot to another. That's what running is. So if you can just be on the feet more, then you're going to do well to build that base. And I won't bore you by going through all the like phases of training, but the first phase is base, is foundational stuff. So you're just easy running, time on the feet, some walking, running. If you want to really get fit, become a really fit runner, then you need to think about how many hours you can be out there sustained doing like a certain level of your heart rate at a certain level and just out there for a long period of time. That builds proper fitness. That expands your aerobic capacity. Just going out for half an hour and running hard doesn't do it as much, apart from the fact you'll probably be sedentary for more of the day anyway. But yeah, don't fall into the trap of thinking that running is a failure or wrong. Walking is a failure or wrong. I walk quite often, or sometimes like I'll just sort of stop and check my phone or have a coffee. If it's a long, like if I'm at the peak of my training for an ultra run, and I've got like a 5-hour long run on the cards, I'm breaking that up. Like I'm stopping and having an aid station. I'm stopping and having a coffee and watching the world go by for 10 minutes, and then I'm carrying on, maybe walking, running, feeding. It's time on the feet. That's important. We haven't given a third mistake. Third mistake is not going to the gym. Man, if I could like guarantee that every runner gyms, that would be my like life goal. Okay. Because like strength training is just really important. Moving your body completely, and not just having a restricted running motion, strengthening up all of the stabilizing muscles that are required for good form, is essential for. It's like the golden bullet for injury prevention is strength training. So if you're not strength training, if you haven't got a gym membership, get one. Buy one fewer round a week and pay for a gym membership, and have gym training in the gym as part of your life. I think strength training should happen at least like twice a week for runners, 2 or 3 times a week for runners.
Sure, awesome. Okay, and we kind of end in quite thank you, Chloe. I appreciate it. For anyone else that this is new to, by the way, then there's an opportunity every week to send in questions for the upcoming guest. So hopefully that gives you a chance to feel a bit more involved and get any of those questions for that person actually to them, because I can appreciate sometimes it's difficult. It gets whitewashed. Now, moving on to the next set of questions really is questions for I guess this is kind of a question for yourself, but I always like to ask a guest to come on and give 3 pieces of advice for themselves at some point, at various points in their life. If you could look back and lock yourself in a room with someone, which is you, just at a younger age, different point in your life, what 3 pieces of advice would you give that Tommy?
I wouldn't give him shit. I'd let him suffer through it and learn. I got here. You're going to get there. I think... what would I tell him? I'd tell him to worry less. I think it's probably that's got to be one of the most common answers to this question. Your younger self worries more. I think that's just a fact. These are all the irony of this is that I will sit there, look at my younger self, and I'll tell him things that he is about to learn anyway. So the funny thing about this situation is I could fast track that, and he'd probably become more successful than me quicker. But
well, this is the point. What would you tell your younger self to help you?
Yeah, I would say worry less. I was quite an anxious. I can be quite an anxious person. I think I definitely was quite an anxious person. I would say, what else would I say? It's not as complicated as you think it is. I think, and that is just life. Like, I think you can overthink and think that, am I going to get here? Am I going to do this? Am I going to like reach my full potential? Whatever the fuck that means. But ultimately, like, it's really not that complicated. You've got today, you've got this present moment. You need to eat well, sleep, and exercise, and connect with other people, and it's really that simple. Nothing else really matters as long as you're like giving everything. Like, and you're gonna, now talk. I'm literally like speaking it as if I'm talking to him. You're gonna be all right. Like, you have in you this desire to do and to do more. So whatever you pay attention to, you will succeed at if you really just work hard and keep doing it. But be patient. It will be all right. Worry less. And it's not that complicated. Keep it real simple. I just don't. I don't think. I wish I was told more. I wish I was told more that it's really not that hard. Like, it doesn't have to be that hard. I think. Yeah, I've heard it somewhere that, disposition is more important than position. That meaning that, it doesn't really matter what situation you're in. What matters is how you're seeing that situation, is how you're approaching that situation. There are people who have way more than you, have everything you'd ever want, but their disposition is so negative that they can't appreciate it. I used to work with someone who was very well off, investor, had a Porsche, smart guy, just like constantly like angry and constantly like annoyed at things and sad and depressed, and just like, I don't want anything he has. I definitely don't want his disposition. And I guess what would the third thing be that I would tell myself? Be patient. Be patient.
I like that a lot. Cool. There's one more question that I have for you, really, from it's actually from the last guest. So I had Jack on last week. Now I'm going to ask you for a question for the next guest as well, and you still aren't going to know who it is, but it's the continuity factor between episodes. Jack's question is a bit of a self-reflection as well, in this, but he said, when you've been upset and then reflected on it, did you look at it and say, did I actually just hold myself to my own standards rather than someone else's standards? Have you ever looked at it that way?
Pointed question. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's definitely happened. All the time. I think that might be the like leading cause of upset, is that you're disappointed in yourself. When I've ever got angry or annoyed, or that's how it manifests for me, by the way. Some people might cry, some people might like get quiet or whatever. I get angry. That's my disposition, which has always been something I've tried to work on, but I have a bit of a like fiery kind of, if something's not going on. But it's not because I'm actually annoyed at the other person. It's I'm embarrassed,
mm-hmm.
or I know I've messed up in some way, or like, I feel like they're thinking a certain thing about, because I cocked up, and on reflection you can see that. But yeah, 100%. Like whenever I'm like annoyed, upset, frustrated, it's on me. And if I were to give anyone advice about, because I get a lot of comments. I said to you before this that I reply to every single comment. That's not strictly true. If they're an annoying comment,
get out of there.
I usually ignore it. But some people are quite. They have a bit of a victimhood mindset. They have a bit of a, and I appreciate you want to tell someone who might listen that you've got this problem, and that's great. But if I were to reply to any of those comments, I have one reply, and that is, what are you going to do about it? And you can say that with the tonality of like, what are you going to do about it? Like, whatever. No, what are you actually going to do about that? Because as soon as you realize that, it might not be your fault, but it's your responsibility, and there's things you can do to solve a situation. As soon as you realize that action is the chief good, and that doing something is really the only thing that you have power to do, then you realize that like that, being accountable, it fixes things, man. Like it really fixes things. So like if you feel frustrated, if you feel angry or like a victim or like sad about something, it is you that is responsible to do something about it. So yeah, I guess that's tangent, like I've been a bit of a tangent off the question, but I think, yeah, like so often when I feel annoyed or feel like a victim or whatever, it's me who needs to sort it out. It's on me. It's on you. What are you going to do about it?
Cool. What question would you like to ask the next guest?
Cool.
It can be as silly or as like deep as you want.
Now we've spoken deeply, so it feels like I should. The next guest. I mean, it might be different. It might be the same as your previous question if you ask that again. But I think like a certain age in your life where you really know yourself, or at least like feel like know yourself, is like around the age of like 7. And maybe this is too much of a closed question, so I'll say please expand at the end of the question. But what would your 7-year-old self think of you now? If your 7-year-old self saw you, would he or she be proud?
I really like that question. I think that's, and I will get them to expand, don't you worry.
Please expand.
Yeah, okay. I'll make a
if your
note.
7-year-old self saw you now, would they be proud? Please expand.
Excellent. Okay. Now, firstly, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you very, very much. Now, there's something that I just want to touch on. You have spoken during this podcast a little bit about UTMB, which I'm going to take a complete stab in the dark here. Ultra traversing Mont Blanc.
Oh, I was close. Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, yeah.
Okay, Ultra Trail Mont Blanc. Damn it, that's the word I was thinking earlier
close,
on.
Dude.
Okay, so it's all around and on Mont Blanc, which I can appreciate has got to be pretty mad terrain, and it's something that it's your goal. You spoke about it got taken away from you, and you reapplied to do it this year. Didn't manage to win the ballot kind of thing. Now, I can appreciate that's got to be a bit of a sucker punch, but it seems to have kind of given you an opportunity, as you've spoken about, to actually do some more of this coaching. Do you want to tell everyone that's listening about what you've got in the works? Yeah,
the coaching has always been a plan to kind of relaunch. Last year I was doing it and then started a new job, and it was just quite a lot. If you've got a new job, I work in sales, and sales can be quite demanding. At the end of the day, it's not like people talk about have a side hustle, do your 9 to 5, then do your side hustle. My 9 to 5 is quite intense, so or can be. So you do need like to rest or whatever. But now that I'm sort of more comfortable in the role and stuff, I'm really keen to relaunch. So yeah, I am relaunching my coaching. There's going to be like a limitation on how many people I take on board, but what will come of it will be one-on-one coaching with some sort of 2 different packages. There'll also be some plans that I'm putting on my website, so your training plans for a 5K, 10K, blah, 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 all the standard stuff. Also looking to do some events. But I guess the difference and the real philosophy behind the coaching, it's not just, it can be, I'm running a marathon, I need a plan, of course. But I really want it to, like, something that's really important to me is that you train sustainably. And part of that is actually teaching you the key principles that are required for you to, go and do it yourself. What I would love is to have someone who I coach go away from being coached by me and really feel empowered and facilitated to write their own plan and understand the key, pretty simple principles that are required to run sustainably and train efficiently. And then, if they needed a coach again, they can have it for accountability and that sort of thing, but their knowledge has really been improved. So that's like a really important thing to me, right? In the training plans, your off-the-shelf plans, or whether it's coaching, just ensuring that person feels like they're learning why we're doing what we're doing is super important. So yeah, excited to kind of get that off the ground.
So firstly, for anyone that's listening, watching, if you've been enjoying hearing how Tommy thinks and wish you could have a bit more of that in your life, there's literally a way that can happen. So consider that. And where can they find you and that?
I try to be TommyRunPT everywhere. But yeah, TikTok, Instagram is where I am most of the time. I've tried Threads, but it's not really
I've avoided it at the moment. I've avoided Threads just because I feel like I'm about to get an endless number of notifications from random stuff.
It just feels like a clickbait site. But TikTok and Instagram. Usually people feel more comfortable messaging on Instagram. So there we are.
Sure. Awesome. Well, for everyone, again, listening and watching today, thank you very much. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to find myself or the podcast page, it's at mindsets_podcast. It's the same on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. And you can probably find me through those same methods as well. I really am looking forward to hearing a response to your specific question, and we will expand. And so thank you for everyone for tuning in. I look forward to the next one.
Cheers.
With